I was mistaken in the last video. This is the last sample problem from section D on dimension. And this time we're asked both for the nullity and for the rank. Rank and nullity are related to each other, and let's take a look at what that relationship is. So the first thing I want to do is take the reduced row echelon form of the matrix that I'm asked for these things for. So the RF of this guy, once I put it through the process, is going to be 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, and 2 rows of zeros. And then if we identify its statistics, you can see that n was equal to 3, but we also have 3 pivot columns. And the result of that is the difference between n and r is 0. And of course, that was the nullity. That's basically the number of vectors in the null space. This has an empty null space. The rank, however, is the number of pivot columns. And let's see why rank and nullity are what they are. It's basically the properties of these two sets. Remember, we have the sets D and F every time we put a matrix into reduced row echelon form, where D represents basically the number of columns that represent the pivot columns. So in our case, that's 1, 2, and 3. And F represents the number of free columns, in essence, the number of columns remaining in the matrix that are not pivot columns, the non-pivot columns. And of course, in this case, that's an empty set. So when we're identifying rank, we're literally identifying the number of pivot columns, which is the number of elements in set D. And when we're identifying the nullity, we're identifying the number of members of the null set. And the number of members of the null set in reduced row echelon form is going to be representative of the free columns. In this case, there are no free columns, and so the nullity, that is the dimension of the null set of A, is equal to 0. There are no column vectors that represent the null set. And finally, the rank is equal to the number of pivot columns, which in this case is equal to 3. So there's the rank, and there's the nullity for this matrix A.